everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Healthtech Pigeon, where we're dissecting and discussing the latest health tech news so you don't have to. I'm Amy, and with me today I have the lovely Taffy. Welcome, Taffy, and our colleague Adama on producing duties. Thank you, Adama, as always, for the great producing work. Before we get delve into the stories, which there are a few wide-ranging topics on this episode today, how are we feeling about the bank holiday? I know I'm, for one, am quite excited for the 4-day weekend ahead. But how about you, Taffy?
I'm well. You know what's so funny? I didn't even know the bank holiday Monday was even happening. I was saying to Adva this morning, like, it felt like such a gift. Like, wow, I have Friday off.
What a nice surprise.
Yeah, and Monday. So yeah, it's gonna be good. Probably gonna go to Essex, Southend. Go to the
nice.
beach, have some fish and chips.
That sounds like an ideal British bank holiday weekend. To be honest. There's actually a new fish and chip shop just opened in my town, and maybe I should pay them a visit as well. We can do
Yeah.
an honorary fish and chips.
Yeah.
Anyway, without further ado, let's get into some health tech. So the first story we'd like to just touch on briefly, but obviously not least important at all, is a new fundraise round with a company called Hellocare, who've secured $47 million for their AI-assisted virtual care system. So what they've described as an oversubscribed funding round. They've managed to have investment from a handful of health systems that are backing them in this sort of virtual integrated system. If you go on their website, there's actually, it looks like they do, honestly, everything. There's solutions from virtual nursing, telehealth, cameras, monitoring systems, different segments across hospital, home care and primary care, device, AI. So honestly, it looks like they kind of do a bit of everything, but it's really quite cool what they're doing. They've got 4K cameras that stream into patient rooms so that you can monitor patients remotely, and also integrating that into a whole system where they can track people's health and offer insights, and more importantly, just connect up nurses and clinicians and patients across the hospital system. So I think it's cool news that their round was oversubscribed. It shows that there's obviously an appetite for thinking about the system as a whole and integrating tech across all those touch points. So yeah, it's nice to see the appetite. As always, we like to see the appetite, the interest, and look forward to seeing how it progresses. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Taffy, on how do we feel about remote monitoring? Do we do we feel like that's something that you would want?
Yeah, I think okay, so I have a question before I respond. So it's like, I'm assuming it would be integrating, tech and AI to like the systems, like as in like, I don't know, checking obs and stuff like that, or is that more like integrating tech with like face-to-face contact with clients?
Well, it seems like, and this is just me looking at their website, obviously there will be more that they would be able to explain themselves, I'm sure. But it's across all of those areas. So they do from literally like virtual consultations with nurses and people at home, but also remote patient monitoring, like vital signs,
Right.
RPM. They do also digital clinics, remote examinations, even
Right.
observing patients virtually as well.
Mm.
So that did raise a few questions in my mind about like what do they like. I almost imagined like you know those kind of CCTV people that sit in a room with loads of screens and they're kind of watching loads of screens, like monitoring
Mm,
different aspects of a building.
right.
It's probably much more advanced than that, but
Yeah.
in my head, I had a picture of a
Right.
clinician or nurse just sitting there with all of these screens monitoring. I have no idea if that is actually how it works in
Like
practice,
multiple screens
but
for different patients.
I kind of liked the idea that they had like loads of screens in front of them. They're like, "Oh, this is patient one. This is patient two."
I love that.
But in essence, it's integrating at a system level.
Mm,
So I imagine, each hospital, each clinic, each healthcare setting that
mm,
uses this type of tech
yeah,
will have its own way of adopting it,
makes
and
sense.
that will be like the most useful for them.
Right.
So yeah, integrated tech solutions. It's positive, and I think people are like gearing more towards this. Like we're becoming so much more advanced with how
Mm,
we, not just the tech that we're making, but how we're linking it up as well. It does
mm,
raise a little bit of a question around workforce skills and whether the hospitals, clinics, like, are all equipped to do this.
mm,
Um, so yeah, that's an interesting maybe thing to think of, maybe at a global level as well, of how this kind of thing is rolled out
yeah.
to, like, what about clinics and hospitals in, other countries that might not be quite set up to have this kind of tech? Or, does it, on the flip side, allow for remote, does it give greater opportunity there, for, perhaps people that are in more remote locations, for example, that might really benefit from like something like virtual nursing. So yeah,
Right.
questions, but really cool. And to be honest, like, their website is really nice and got me quite excited when I was looking at the images of the 4K
I love that.
TVs in the
Oh,
in the
Esther.
patient consultation rooms.
Wow. I
Um,
mean, yeah, I think the story is super interesting. I think where I have my skepticism is just what is really the focus of driving this integration? Like, is it for us to maximize profits, or is it actually for genuine patient improvement and patient care? Because I know for me, I would be fired up with, when I get to that age, having lots of tech, like not putting a burden on my future children to have to visit me so often, or even if I was to go down the route of being in a care home, needing to consistently being like seen so much. I would love to ease, healthcare workers in that way. But that's because I've grown up with tech all my life. I've never not been with tech, like since I was crawling, my mum heated up my cereal in the microwave. I mean, some people don't heat their cereal. That's a whole other topic. Because I heat up my cornflakes. Some people don't do that. Some people think, I'm guessing you're one of them just from
well,
your reaction.
actually, I did used to microwave my cereal as well, but I thought that was a really weird thing to do, and I've never discussed it. I've never aired that with anyone before, so I'm glad that actually now I don't feel so alone. I
Right?
always thought that was a really weird thing that my family did.
No, it's the best ever.
It goes all soggy though.
No, but it's great. Like you have to eat it quickly whilst it's crispy and hot. Anyways, we digress.
Yeah,
I,
anyways.
I share that point. Yeah, I only share that point just to say that like I've grown up with tech, so it's part of my world. But for a lot of like the aging population right now, they didn't grow up with tech. So is that really the way that's going to help them? Is that really
Well,
like personalized care?
well, this is not just in that age group. This is across health systems in general. So this, as far as
Right.
I understand, is it's across a range of groups. But that does raise an interesting point, around whether something like virtual consultations are suited to every patient. But I
Mm,
think it's just about choice and it's about ease. It's about also delivery. I think a big aspect is delivery. And if at the end of the day, if you can get good quality care to someone quicker, through a
Mm,
virtual means, why not do it? And I think most patients would be fine with that. Especially now, like, people are just so much more used to virtual meetings. Like, it's just a normal part of how things operate now in the like in the working world, in the healthcare world, um, even in person, like more in personal life as well. Like, since not even since COVID, but I think that was a bit of a breaking point for online stuff.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it shows that there's some nice traction, and it's like, at the end of the day, it's a good example of not just a good tech, from what I can see, not
Mm,
just a good tech, but like a system approach. So they've got a solution that covers like a whole system,
mm,
um, that can be used in like multiple different ways, which for healthcare,
mm,
which is usually very complicated. There could be different processes in different clinics, different hospitals, different structures, fragmented structures in some cases. This kind of solution could be really good because you've got everything in one place, and it can be built to
mm.
obviously serve the most pressing problems in that particular setting.
Right. You know what? I completely hear you. I think the only thing that comes to my mind is I think I think on a general level, the I feel like the easiest thing tends to be the thing that we want, like we're drawn to. But I think about just, you know, if let's say for example, you're gonna call a GP or book an appointment, you're typically like in a quite, fragile place. There's something about like human connection and being able to really speak to someone in person and being able to really like show someone like this is what's going on with me, right? And I have fears about us going so tech with care that we can lose that connection that we can have when we have a physical um consultation, where we're able to be observed on a physical level. I even just think about like, and it's very abstract, but like this idea of like, when children are first born, they want physical contact with their mothers because it brings that level of comfort. And I think there is a level of comfort that can come from having like a face-to-face interaction with your physician, that I think can be lost. Like for example, like I obviously know that like a doctor probably most likely wouldn't reveal like, you know like the results of a test for like some tests like in virtually, but like an example of that, like are we going to a place whereby we'd reveal like, you know diagnoses and stuff like that through tech, instead of really having a conversation where it's face to face and like breaking the news to someone in a way that you can really read the person like holistically, not just through like a screen. So, but at the same time, like we do need to be efficient and like really close that gap of like the need and the demand. So I think it's like it's just important to create a balance with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really love that point actually, and I think it's definitely like, from a wider health tech perspective, something that we've definitely spoken about before on Pigeon, and just generally about that human care, and the importance of not losing that aspect. And I think it's that balance of, will this take away from that, or will this actually allow space for clinicians to focus on the areas that they need to focus on, the human experience, and then have tech to alleviate the burdens and take away the admin or situations where that is not required, so it can leave space for that human interaction, which 100% for care is what we need and what we want, and like what we crave, I think, at the end of the day. So, yeah, excellent point, and something which I'm sure we will continue to discuss as health tech evolves, as tech is integrated, as new
Wow.
solutions are coming up. But actually, it could be really positive as it allows more
Right.
time for clinicians to be there in the moments they need to
Right.
be there, and that's really exciting. like the prospect of having that connection back
Right.
between patients and clinicians. Not that it's ever been completely lost, but
Right.
I know that it's something that people want, crave. Lovely. Well, that leads pretty nicely. Although actually I say that.
Yeah.
Not completely related. Onto the next story, which we're going to discuss. I mentioned at the beginning we've got quite a varied topic of conversations today.
Oh,
So on to the next story, please. The next story we're going to chat about is chicken nuggets.
wow.
It
Gosh.
might not be what you might imagine talking about on a health podcast. But in this sense, we're actually talking about lab-grown chicken nuggets, which have been hailed as a transformative step for cultured meat.
Okay.
So in this story, a Japanese-led team have grown an 11-gram chunk of chicken, and I'm not sure if that's the normal amount that a chicken nugget is. I guess it probably would be. Anyway, 11-gram chunk of chicken, and say
Okay.
the product could be on market in 5 to 10 years, which for me just seems still quite a long time away, personally.
Right.
10 years. Anyway, researchers are claiming that it's a breakthrough because they've managed to grow the meat using these fine hollow fibers that deliver the oxygen and nutrients to the chicken muscle cells that are suspended in a gel, which is different to the normal approaches that can sometimes leave the cells in the middle starved of nutrients and so therefore haven't grown as well. What they've done is it's created a bioreactor,
Wow.
and they believe that it's going to pave the way for whole
Wow.
cuts of chicken and beef, pork and fish to be
Wow.
grown in the lab. So they're excited about it. People are excited about it. Lab-grown meat is, it's one of those topics that does crop up quite a lot in the media, I think, because of the controversy around the idea of it and how it makes people feel. And there's also like several tangential sort of health and social and environmental impacts that we can discuss around lab-grown meat. The actual health impacts of meat itself. I know that other companies have spoken about fortifying cultured meat with different types of nutrients and that can promote health benefits. But also there's a huge environmental factor around lab-grown meat, obviously trying to reduce mass production of meat and reduce carbon emissions. So quite exciting. I'm interested, Taffy, in what you think about if lab-grown meat. Is this something you would eat? Is this something we want? Is this something that
Yeah.
is going to move the needle? These are questions that I've got. Cultured meat, lab-grown meat, is this something that's actually going to move the needle in the space? Are we too far away? Is it too an ethereal concept? Are we going to eventually see that in the future of, instead of going to the supermarket and seeing an aisle of vegan vegan produce or gluten-free produce, there's like a lab-grown section. I don't know how we're going to market it, but it does raise interesting questions about health and environment. So interesting story here, and a good example of using a set like good science to produce a good products that can potentially have quite substantial benefits on like the food industry and for the environment, which we know is heavily linked to health as well. So
Wow.
thoughts, what do you think?
Yeah, it's mind blowing. Like to think that we could grow chicken breast in the lab. Like it's just my mind feels a little bit blown. But to be honest, I shouldn't be too surprised. Like, the way that we've been able to create like tissues in the lab, and we've been able to do a lot even just with human cells. Now we're progressing onto animals. I think it would solve a lot of like ethical dilemmas that we have when it comes to the environment. I mean, we'd probably have to still like have agriculture, I would imagine, to have like something to start off with. But I think
Yeah.
I feel like a little bit sad for the farmers, and like like people whose lives are like are surrounded by like for example, like my family, they grow up on farms, and like I think there's like I think for me personally, I would still want to eat like fresh meat, um compared to a lab grown meat, just because I think there's like certain things that an animal, maybe the way that it like is synthesized, it's like there's like certain things that it's exposed to that the lab could maybe just never produce, like vitamin D. I mean, maybe we could stimulate that in the lab, but there's just so many different things that an animal is like exposed to that is part of its development to even create the meat that it produces compared to like the lab. I don't know how much we could synthesize in a lab.
Mm,
I don't even really know like the like long-term effects of eating lab-grown meat as well. So I think, yeah, I think I personally would want to have my meat fresh. Um, yeah,
I think that you're probably one of many, Taffy, on that camp. It's an ongoing, quite not controversial per se, but it's one of those things I think people feel quite divided on, and can get quite that people get very personal about things that they eat, and
right.
it's can be culture. It's identity. Food is
Wow.
a big part of people's lives, and changing that, it can make some people feel uncomfortable, but there are what it does raise, the whole idea of cultured meat, I think, is interesting questions, not just about environment, because about health as well, and what what can we do to essentially try new approaches that are going to reduce the environmental strain that we've put on the planet. And
Right.
I think that's where most of the motivation to
Mhm.
culture meat coming from. It's not saying that we're gonna, like, in an ideal world, everybody wants to eat a fresh, like, animal. I think most people would agree in terms of taste, or I don't know, nutrients. But
Yeah.
actually, having said that, they're claiming that the nutritional value can be high because it can be synthesized
Wow.
with
Really?
like bespoke kind of nutrients. And I don't think this company are claiming that, but I know other companies have claimed that it can be fortified with additional additives that can actually benefit health, like vitamins that we are missing in our body, and um, for specific populations, for example, fortifying with, I don't know, vitamin D, or like whatever it is that might be
Yeah.
needed. So I think there are health implications, there are health questions.
Right.
Um, it's cool to see like these kind of like science techniques being utilized, and actually, in a broader sense, trying to obviously generate an industry approach to something which at the moment is quite in its early stages. Although I think I heard a story a couple of weeks back around the UK giving approval to one of the first lab cultured meats on the market. So things are moving in that area. But yeah, who knows? Maybe not too far away in the future, we'll
Wow.
be having instead of a chicken nugget meal deal. Meal deal, is that what's called? That I'm thinking, and I don't even know what the
Ah,
McDonald's chicken nugget like meal is
nuggets.
called. Is it just chicken nuggets? I don't know.
Nuggets, I think.
What is it? Box of nuggets.
I think it's McNuggets.
McNuggets.
I'm like Googling it now.
You can tell I'm a regular. You can tell I'm a
Yeah, it's McNugget. I mean, just
Mac.
to add to your point, I think it's interesting to hear that the driving, the motivation behind it is the, I guess, like, yeah, like the sustainability and the whole environmental focus. And to be honest, it makes me want to question, like, how many people who are currently vegan and vegetarian because of the ethical issues with killing animals could now start eating meat again if we were to start synthesizing meat in labs. Like, maybe this could like spark a whole new movement back to eating meat.
I think so. I think that's like a big part of it. And a lot of people don't eat meat for those reasons. A lot of people are very conscious about the environment now. I mean, as we should be, and eating meat, it does, like, we know that the result that is proven that the food system contributes to a huge amount of emissions, and especially the meat industry, and we know that, like, from
Mm,
from like from facts, from data. So I think
right,
people are searching for alternatives, and that's why these companies are getting attention and funding,
right,
because people want different approaches, but also people like meat and they like the taste of it. Like, they don't want to completely give it up. So yeah, quite cool, quite interesting and exciting. And I do think, although it's a slightly, and we might not think this is a completely health tech focused, I think talking about environmental focus is really important, because
mm,
ultimately everything is linked. We
mm,
know health is linked to environment.
mm,
Um, it's bigger concepts around like health, well-being, social
right,
impact. Like, it's important to bring these into discussions.
right.
And back into the health tech space, let's move on to our next story. So, the next story is about blood testing, but not just any blood testing. It's about an innovative blood testing tech that could spell the end of needle phobia. UK-based blood testing company called Thriver has joined up with a device manufacturer called Tasso, who has created a blood testing tech that is needle-free. So it tackles something called needle phobia. Some of you out there might have needle phobia or know someone that has needle phobia and might be quite interested in this story. Apparently, needle phobia affects 1 in 10 adults. So, this collaboration between Thriver and Tasso actually aims to make blood testing accessible and pain free for people that experience that intense fear of needles. And it uses a non invasive, needle free method. It's particularly timely because I don't know if anyone's seen the show Adolescence on Netflix. It's quite popular at the moment, but there is a scene in that where
Mm,
both the child and the father are scared of needles in the clinic room. So um, it definitely is something that's present, and particularly in children, the prevalence of needle phobia is very high in that group, with 63% of children and 25% of young adults reporting that they're scared of needles. So it's clearly a big problem. So what's the company doing? What does the tech do? Um, Essentially, it allows a needle-free device to test your blood, and you can do it at home. Um, the device allows painless blood collection, so collects liquid blood samples without the need for needles or finger pricks. There's actually some first-hand experience from people using it, and what it also allows the collaboration, not just the fact that people are able to access a way to get draw their blood without that needle. A great part of this collaboration is the fact that the results are personalized, and you can get your blood test results in a really incredibly user-friendly way, um, specifically targeted to the problems that you've or the issues or the areas that you want to look at in your blood test. So Yeah, it's a cool story. It's the first kind of collaboration of this kind, um, and it's quite exciting to see. Um, as always, device companies teaming up with tech companies and healthcare companies to kind of create that interface between um, understanding results, empowering patients, getting good information, but also having the technology, the device to support that process. So, yeah, very cool. Good news for people out there scared of needles, and also generally giving people more options to kind of take control of their own health, have more knowledge about their blood tests, also just doing it in a really easy way, being sent a testing kit, doing the test at home, and then getting your blood test results. So yeah, Taffy, what do you think? Are you scared of needles? Do you know anyone that is?
You know what? I am not generally scared of needles. I'm scared of needles the second before it goes in my arm. But at that point, it's already in my arm that I can't then say no. So I wouldn't say like I have a phobia. Like if someone's like, you need to have a blood test, I'll be like, sure, let's do it. But then as it's like about to come in, that's when I'm like, but then at that point, it's like, jumping out of a plane. People are like, woo, yeah, let's jump out of a plane. And then like the 2 seconds before you jump out of the plane, it's that kind of like realization of like, this is happening to me. So I think that's my kind of reaction to needles just generally. But honestly, my concern with this is how much are we like blanketing people? Because we there are so many things within healthcare that like like are we like coddling people a bit too much?
Mm,
How far is pain management going?
yeah,
Because there's so many different things that we could be creating mindsets of avoidance of pain, like for example with surgeries or you know
yeah.
like
I think yeah, that's a good point, and I think essentially a big, although needle phobia is important here, and for those people that like honestly have a genuine phobia and cannot access blood tests. But I think the main key point of this is also the fact that it's just a very easy way to test blood. So it's
mm,
not only needle free, but it's you place it gently on your skin. It painlessly collects a sample of blood, takes 5 minutes. They then submit the results, and you can get results in 48 hours through the app. So it comes as a written report from a private GP, along with personalized like recommendations of what to do, whether that's exercises or supplements. So the needle phobia is important, but I think that's a good point. But I think it what this does is paves the way for what like tackling wider issues beyond needle
mm,
phobia. It's actually giving people power, because
mm,
when you go get a blood test, it's actually
yeah,
quite, I don't know, my experience, I personally got a blood test. I got a blood test very recently,
yeah, yeah,
and I wanted to get the results of my blood test, and I actually, it was difficult. Like I went through, this is just through an NHS GP.
right,
um, it was a little tricky for me to get hold of them, and I think it's what this does. It allows people to have that knowledge
yeah,
and power over their own results, but also still providing clinically proven advice
yeah.
from doctors.
You know what? I completely hear you, especially with the ease, because I've definitely been in hospital settings where like they can't find my vein, and I end up being like prodded around quite a lot. So yeah, I guess I see it from that seamlessness and that guess that control that we can have. Because yeah, like when we do care with our hands, sometimes we're more prone to like making mistakes. And I guess the whole point of a doctor is to really elevate the care for the patient. So if we can like create better results and also reduce the harm that that we're having on patients. Yeah, that does make sense. I guess for me, maybe I'm just thinking more like the long-term effect, but at the same time, like, what's it called? I'm sure someone would still have surgery if, like they really
Yeah.
needed to like survive. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what the idea is what we always come back to, right? It's what we always come back to the idea of like technology in these kind of cases, allowing, giving people autonomy
Mm,
and also engaging people in health, in their own health, that can prevent problems happening. We spot things earlier, we're more in control, we're more on top of it, we're more conscious, we're more aware, and therefore less burden, eventual burden, hopefully, on health systems, because some of that burden is taken on by the individual, and actually it can be a positive process of learning to understand your body and having the tools that are already out there. Like, how long have we been doing blood tests for? Long time. How is it only now that we are, you know, giving people the technology to do it themselves?
mm, wow.
Obviously, we have to caveat that with, we can't assume that everybody's going to be an expert in understanding health. It's complex, and there are trained clinicians for a reason.
Mm,
And we cannot completely hand over that power. Like, it's kind of about teamwork, and that's why I particularly like this story, because it's quite it's although the tech is not simple. They use very advanced, machine learning models to personalize the questionnaire, and to personalize the results and things like that. But it's a relatively simple idea, because blood tests, have been around for ages. So I like that idea of empowerment. Needle free,
mm.
great. I mean, it's a bonus. I can't wait to try mine.
You're
And
looking forward to blood taking now. That's
yeah, I'm honestly excited.
revolutionized.
I'm excited to try it and see the difference, and also more excitedly
Mm,
for the results. I think that's the exciting part of that. And it's almost like that step further than having your wearable devices, having your
mm.
Aura ring, having your Apple Watch. It's like another layer of granularity of what's happening in your bloods. What do you need to know? What are the signs? What are the vital signs?
You know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of how, like, some people can be afraid of their health. Like, I know some people are afraid to go to the dentist, but sadly, they miss out in understanding their health. I feel like something like this is actually like you're saying, it helps us to know ourselves better in like in a safe environment to do that as well, like where we
Yeah,
have a bit more control. So I guess yeah, it's like you're saying, it's revolutionizing like how we see our health and how we approach our health, which is really actually quite special.
I think so. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that feels like a nice place to end the episode. Um, Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and obviously keep keep joining us every week for the latest health tech news. You can find all these stories and more on healthtechpigeon.com. Subscribe and share with your friends, family, colleagues, and we look forward to you listening and connecting with you next time. Thanks so much.
See you, everyone.
Bye.